to see you. Thanks for tuning in at lunchtime, which I know is probably a bit earlier than you normally meet, but it's 6 p.m. here in Brighton, so I do appreciate it. So we're talking about the Postscript Murders, which is came out in March in the US, and it's so the book starts when an elderly lady called Peggy Smith, who lives in a retirement apartment on the south coast of England, actually very close to where I'm speaking to you now, south coast of England, is found dead in her apartment. And obviously this is really sad, but nobody is too surprised because Peggy is 90 and she's not in the best of health.
I'm sharing a map. So this is where Brighton is.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Get over how good you are at all this, Pauline. So yes, so Brighton,
there's where you are. You're
and Shoreham is just a little bit further on, so it's pretty much just a little bit along the coast between Brighton and Worthing. So Peggy, when she dies, nobody's really surprised, but then her caregiver is a Ukrainian woman called Natalka, and when she comes to clear out Peggy's apartment, she finds that it's full of crime fiction novels, which we'll all agree is suspicious in itself. But then she finds that these crime novels, a lot of them are dedicated to Peggy, and what's more, a lot of them say thank you for the murders. So Harbinder starts to think this is a little bit interesting. And then she finds some business cards. And the business cards describe Peggy as a murder consultant. And this is enough to send Natalka to the local police station where she meets Harbinder Kaur. Now, I don't know if any of you have read my previous book, which was called The Stranger Diaries, which featured Detective Harbinder Kaur, who in this book, the beginning of this book, Harbinder says that she thinks that she should win the prize for the best gay Sikh detective in Sussex. And then she realizes she is the only gay Sikh detective in Sussex. So we meet Harbinder in the previous book, and she comes to the fore really in this book. At first, she's a little skeptical about whether a murder has happened, but she agrees to investigate. And before long, a crime writer who did employ Peggy as a murder consultant is found dead. So we know that there is a killer on the loose, and the crime has to be solved partly by Harbinder and her police colleague Neil, who Harbinder has to constantly imagine as a little woodland animal to stop him being too annoying, and by Harbinder, the local cafe owner, Benedict, who's an ex-monk, and by Edwin, Peggy's 80-year-old friend. So this ill-assorted crew end up going on a road trip which involves more crime writers, more book events, and more murders. So I think that's probably all I can say right now. But the book absolutely starts out with Peggy Smith in her seaside apartment.
And can I say where they end up going?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
yes.
So I'll just show a picture. So they end up going to an actual literary festival in Aberdeen, Scotland, right?
Yes. Aberdeen is sometimes called the Granite City, but also called the Silver City. It's a very beautiful city, and near some amazing countryside, as those pictures show. And I went there for a crime writing event a couple of years ago, and the library where a lot of the events are set is next to a theatre and a church, and locals call it, I'm going to do a Scottish accent here, so apologies to anyone who is Scottish. Now they call it education, salvation, and damnation. So, I mean, that's just had to go in the book, really.
So I want to come back to Harbinder, but let's, because I thought it was such a great combination of combination of characteristics that people probably hadn't seen before. But tell us about the inspiration for Peggy.
Well, Peggy was inspired by my Aunt Marge. And a lot of people seem to have an Aunt Marge, I found out.
Oh, that's funny.
So my Aunt Marge used to live in Norfolk, where she was a big help with me when I wrote the Dr. Ruth Galloway novels, which I'm still writing. But she's recently moved to the south coast, and that picture shows Marge and I in Gosport, which is where she's moved to, on a boat and with a glass of wine, which are two of Marge's favourite things, really. But when Marge moved to the south coast, something about the move, and like Peggy, she lives in a lovely apartment with a beautiful view of the sea. Something about this move made Marge, I can only say, obsessed with murder. And she was continually coming up with ideas for me for good murders for my books. And she'd ring me up and you know how not many people really use your landline now, but Marge always rings on my landline, so I always know it's her. And she often rings me on a Sunday, and I could hear her voice, and she'll say, "Oh, hello, love. I've just seen a vicar going by, and I was thinking, could you kill somebody with incense?" And she just has these amazing ideas for how to kill people. So that's when I started to think, what if there was such a thing as a murder consultant? And what if, you know, it was a highly respectable lady. My Aunt Marge is an ex-maths teacher, super respectable lady, living on her own, just thinking of horrid ways to kill people. And that's really where it started.
Did she have an interest in murder before this move, or was it?
She was always a great fan of crime fiction, actually.
Okay.
And she and my mum, their sisters, were great readers, you know, and I think that's something else I wanted to sort of bring out in the book, in the fact that Peggy and her elderly friends in these apartment blocks, they're three ladies really who are central to the plot. They know a lot of things, and the younger people are always thinking, how did they know that, or how do they know that? And basically they know it through reading. And my mum was the same. She basically knew everything because she read a lot. So Marge has always read a lot, and as I say, she was very helpful when I was writing the Ruth books, because she has a boat, and we used to go on the Norfolk Broads, and she'd show me places and things. So she's always been interested, but it's something about the move, and I think it's because she had this sort of vantage point from her balcony window, where she can see everything that's going on. And it just seemed to make her think about murder plots. And sometimes I'd say to her, well, Marge, you know, you write the book. Oh, no, love, no, I can't write the book. You write it. Make sure you kill someone this way.
Yeah, it's a fascinating group of women in this building, that's for sure.
Marge does have a bit of form, actually, in this respect, because for one of the Ruth books, she came up with a murder of somebody on a stair lift. And I used it in the book, and there was a really nice review of the book in one of the kind of big, you know, serious papers. I think it actually was the Financial Times. And it was nice about the book, and it said, contains one of the nastiest uses of a stair lift I've ever seen. And I cut that out and sent it to Marge, and she was so pleased that she had it framed.
I bet she was. And tell us about Harbinder.
So Harbinder, yes, she appeared in a previous book.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously quite bad at writing standalones, because
yes,
I write two series, the one with Ruth and the Brighton Mysteries, and now I've sort of started a Harbinder series in a way without meaning to. So she appears in the POSTSCRIPT Murders. She is local to Sussex, went to school there, went to university there. She comes from a British Indian family, Sikh background. She's gay and not out to her parents yet.
But and Sikh.
Yes,
so,
yes, a Sikh background.
How did you choose this combination of gay and Sikh? And she lives with her parents, right? So it's
she lives with her parents, and I wanted to make clear that she actually gets on very well with her parents, who are very, you know, nice people and love her very much, but she's not out to them, which is an issue for her, and more so in this book. I'm not quite sure, although I do have a friend who is from this background. In fact, her name is Harbinder Kaur, which is very similar. I have to quickly say Harbinder's not Harpreet, but she was a big help to me when I was writing the book. She sort of, you know, helped a lot with the cultural background, because as a writer you do really think carefully. If you create a character whose cultural background is very different from yours, you do want to get it right and be respectful. And one of the best things Harpreet did actually was introduce me to her mum, who's called Balvinder, and she also advised on the book, and she was great with the food and actually my parents are Italian, and actually, I realized that Italian mothers are quite similar to Indian mothers, really. Food being a big part of it, and family being a big part of it. So the two of them really, really did help me, I hope, sort of get the cultural background right. But I did actually have a smaller character in one of the Ruth books called Harpreet Kaur. But I have to say, Harbinder is not Harpreet, but Harpreet was very helpful.
And I've never even heard of, I mean, I imagine it's a pretty great taboo, difficult to be gay in Sikh culture. No?
Yeah, I think so. And you know, it's not still not easy in any culture, really. You know, even in very liberal cities like Brighton, you know. So I wanted to kind of make that clear, really. And yes, I think it is very difficult coming from that sort of traditional background, and which is why Harbinder, despite being a very out there forceful woman, she's sort of woman who says things like, let's assume I'm in charge, you know, despite that she hasn't come out to her parents yet.
Yeah, so let's see, we've got some question here. Have there been, and I'll show covers of the other series, we'll get to them in a second. Jody's asking, have there been any TV or movie adaptations of your books?
Oh, hi Jody. Well, not yet. But the Ruth books have been optioned 3 times by TV companies.
Oh,
it's a
all right,
big issue. And I'm sure, you know, a lot of people, you know this world, and know writers who've sort of been through this before. So it is quite a big deal, because you go and a TV company is really interested, and they're all full of, yes, we'll have this actor and this actress, and we'll do this and we'll do, and it's all very, very exciting. Excuse me, the cat is now coming closer. There is his tail. Go Gus. I was saying to Pauline, I knew he wouldn't stay quiet for
well,
very
he wants
long.
your attention, right? He's jealous.
Yes, he knows I'm talking to somebody. There you are, Gus. Be a good boy. Yes, so they're all really excited at first and get all enthusiastic about it, and then nothing much. And then quite often a script gets developed, and even actors get talked to. And then so far with me, it's happened that you know, it's gone so far and no further. But actually, I'm just about to sign with a new production company for the Ruth book, so that's maybe moving a little closer to possibly happening. And actually, there has been quite a lot of interest in the POSTSCRIPT murders, and I think partly because it does have, we were talking earlier on, does have this kind of eclectic mix of characters. You've got Harbinder, you know, and really there aren't enough books with you know, a British Indian woman as the main character, but also you have this sort of supporting cast that includes an 80-year-old BBC director, an ex-monk, and a Ukrainian carer. So I think there's a lot of good roles for somebody there in the book. And in fact, there's a British actress called Mandeep Gill, who I think would be amazing as Harbinder. And I keep trying to say that as much as I can on social media, hoping that she'll pick it up and say, yes, I'd love to be her. So not yet is the answer, but you know, it might happen. It really might. And you always just hope, don't you, that they do, you know, because we've all watched TV adaptations of series that haven't been quite as we wanted them. You just do hope that they stick as closely as they can to the books, really. Obviously, I know some things have to change, but
yeah. Yes, I love the Ukrainian combination, and all of the things about learning about the seminary versus monastery, and it is such a great combination.
I hope so. I hope there would be. I do have a friend actually who is a monk, but he didn't want to be mentioned in the acknowledgement. So a school friend, in fact. So he did give me a bit of advice there.
And I did find myself thinking, I want to see Harbinder's expression on her face when she's saying some of these things, or kind of looking, right, when she's reacting to something, because I bet it's very, it's very funny. So yeah, I think it really lends itself to, I think she lends itself, I think, to TV series or a movie. But
thank you.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Tell us about Ruth Galloway, this series.
So this is a series about a forensic archaeologist called Dr. Ruth Galloway, and the Night Hawks is book 13, and it'll come out in the US in June, and they have different covers. You used to be able to see the US covers on my website, but I don't quite know what's gone wrong with that. Something has gone wrong with that. But anyhow, they're beautiful but different covers in the US.
Oh, here's the Night Hawks. Here it is.
So the first, there you are. Yes, I mean, Pauline, I might have guessed that wouldn't be beyond you. So that's the cover of the Night Hawks in the US, very spooky sort of shack. So Ruth Galloway is a forensic archaeologist, and I first got the idea of writing about archaeology because my husband's an archaeologist. And one day we were walking across the Norfolk marshes. I don't know if any of you know Norfolk. It's a beautiful, I mean, we were talking about Vermont, Pauline. There's a bit similar vibe or feeling to Norfolk, really. It's there on the East Coast. It's very beautiful, but parts are quite sort of bleak. And one day, Andy and I and our young kids were walking across Titchwell Marsh, which is on the north coast there. Oh yes, beautiful.
Here.
There we are,
Yeah.
that little bit sticking out there.
Yeah.
And Andy happened to say that prehistoric people had thought marshland was sacred because it's neither land nor sea, but something in between. They saw it as a bridge to the afterlife. So neither land nor sea, neither life nor death. And that's why you sometimes find bodies buried in marshland or treasure or weapons. It's to mark that boundary, if you like, between life and death. And as soon as he said that, the idea for the book sort of came to me. And I saw Ruth kind of walking towards me out of the mist. And I teach creative writing, and I'd never let my students get away with that. Anyway, so I'm working out. But actually I did. She just sort of appeared in front of me, and I sort of thought of this first story, and somebody asked whether they should be read in order. And they don't have to be read in order because each one does stand alone. But I think because the relationships in them have got quite complicated now, it probably is best to start at the beginning. And the first one is called The Crossing Places, and it starts when a forensic archaeologist called Ruth Galloway lives on her own on a beautiful but bleak bit of Norfolk marshland. She teaches at a local university. She goes into work one day and finds a police officer waiting for her, and he's DCI Nelson, and he needs her help with some bones that have been found buried on marshland. And I knew from Andy, my husband, that archaeologists are often consulted when bones are found. So Ruth goes to look at these bones and knows immediately that they are 2,000 years old. But she's then drawn into a more recent case of a child who's disappeared, and incidentally into a very complicated relationship with the policeman, DCI Harry Nelson, and it's got pretty complicated by book 13, which is The Nighthawks.
And what is your husband's specialty or period? It sounds like it might be England, no?
Yes, it is an English prehistory. He's very snooty about anything after the Romans, because in the Ruth books, obviously there are 13 books. I've been through lots of there's Bronze Age and Iron Age and Roman, but I've also had Victorian and Second World War archaeology. But anything after the Romans, he doesn't really want to know. But luckily, I have other advisors who've helped me on that. So yeah, he worked on a site called Boxgrove, which is in Sussex, where they found some very, very old Neolithic remains. And there's a Neolithic causewayed enclosure near us. It's actually older than Stonehenge, but it's nowhere near as, Andy would be horrified to hear me say that, but it's nowhere near as interesting because you can't really see any of it, but it's still very important.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I'd never heard about that, about marshland. That's really...
Isn't it interesting? And it makes you, what I love about archaeology actually is it does make you look at landscape in a different way, and you see how certain landscapes were sort of special to prehistoric people. So yes.
Yeah, and spiritual importance, which is,
Yes.
kind of different than kind of other focuses.
Definitely,
okay.
and some of those places are sort of still spiritually important places like Avebury and Stonehenge. Can understand why people go there, and recently my daughter's at university in Cornwall, and to drive her there you have to pass Stonehenge, and one day we made a very early start and we saw the sun rising over it, and you just thought, wow, that's why it's there, to see that, it felt very, very special.
Oh, incredible. So Bonnie's asking if you need to read the series. You just said no. I mean, kind of, you said, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, because each book is a standalone mystery, and The Nighthawks is a mystery about metal detectorists who find a body, and it involves a Norfolk legend called Black Shuck about a sinister black dog. So you can read it out of order, but I think if you want to kind of get the relationships in the book straight, it might be good to start at the beginning. And I don't know, for me, I usually like to start at the beginning of the series.
And for Harbinder, for the previous book, I mean, I felt I didn't need to start with the previous book.
No, definitely with those books you don't. I think you can, because in those books, I suppose they're slightly different because the whole cast is different apart from Harbinder. So no, you can definitely read the Postscript Murders out of yes, that's the Stranger Diaries. It's so strange. Stranger Diaries is partly set in a school, and the cover, the beautiful US cover there, the school looks just like my old school, which they can't have known.
Oh my
That's
gosh!
really
so you had no input on it, and it just.
No, I suppose it's that sort of era of school, but it really does look like my old school. Gave me quite a shock. And this is very much a kind of Gothic mystery. And there's a sort of, it's about a modern day comprehensive school, but it's in a house that was once owned by a ghost story writer. And that's the school there. And
it won the Edgar Award, which is a literary award for mysteries for best novel.
It did, so excitingly. Last year won the 2020 Edgar Award for Best Novel, which was so thrilling, because I think the Edgars are the oldest mystery writing awards, and they're certainly, I would think, one of the most prestigious. So, and you get a lovely trophy, which I wish I could show you, but it's down the house, which is a little bust of Edgar Allan Poe. So cool.
Nice. Yeah, it takes some doing for Louise Penny to say goosebumps, spooky, smart, and haunting.
Louise is so lovely, and she has always been really lovely about my books. Actually, she's such a nice person.
And let's just talk about your other series briefly, and then Susan, I'll ask your question because I have that same question. Let me pull it up. The Brighton Mysteries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So the Brighton Mysteries are slightly different, and they're set in the 1950s, but now with book 5, which is now you see them they've come up to the 1960s. And they're really based on, the inspiration for them came from my granddad, who was a musical, I guess you might say vaudeville in the US. Is that right? So vaudeville entertainer. He was he was a comedian. In fact, I've got his picture because sort of in my office, I've got this kind of board that has all my inspirations on it, people like Bruce Springsteen and Shakespeare. But my granddad is right here, so it's very easy to show you his picture. So there he is.
Oh, wow. That's a great
He was called Dennis Laws, and he's very dashing, as you can see there.
Let me stop talking and hold it up again so the camera will focus on you. Okay, say something so the camera will focus on you.
So this is my granddad. He was called Dennis Laws, and he was a musical entertainer, mildly famous between the wars. And he died when I was 15, but he left me his playbills, and I just became kind of obsessed with the names on them. There were things like Lou Lenny and her unrideable mule, and Ray Deeney's feats with the feet, and there was in big letters, Ray Deeney, the gay deceiver. I mean, what was all that about? So I wrote a series about a musical magician called Max Mephisto and a detective, Edgar Stevens, solving crimes together. So those are known now as the Brighton Mysteries. They were once called the Magic Men because they were actually based. Max in the books was in the Second World War part of a group of magicians who were asked by Churchill to use stage magic in the war effort, and that actually has basis in reality. There was a group of magicians called the Magic Gang, and that was their job in the Second World War. So that's the kind of background to the books there. But Max, I guess, is very dashing and very like my granddad.
Very. Okay, so how is magic supposed to be used for the war?
Isn't it interesting? And it was a real thing. So what this group of magicians did, and they were led by a guy called Jasper Maskelyne, which has got to be one of the best names ever. Yeah, and he was a very famous magician, and he actually came from a long line of magicians. And his father, Neville Maskelyne, was a well-known magician and also a trickster. And he hacked into Marconi's first radio broadcast. So Jasper Maskelyne, very well-known magician. And in the war, he did things like he created dummy tanks and dummy soldiers. He was based in North Africa. And through his work, I think it made Rommel believe that there were many more British troops there than there were. And he also used light effects. They were meant to have been able to make the Suez Canal disappear through use of lights. So it's very, very interesting. And they created this fake battleship and it was called the HMS Houdini. And they made this fake battleship that looked like the real thing when seen from the air. So it's very, very interesting. And a lot of that comes into these books, particularly the first one, The Zigzag Girl.
Incredible. Wow. So Susan is asking, can you describe your writing process? Do you plot or outline? So I have this question as well, because I've never asked a mystery writer about their process. And I kind of wonder if you yourself have a murder board with the characters and the timeline, or how does it work?
Well, my process has changed a little bit, actually, in the course of my writing. I think now I've written more than 20 mystery novels. So what I always used to do was I would write a chapter plan, quite brief, just a couple of lines in longhand. And I've got here, this is my notebook that's always to hand here. Let me see if I can find a relevant little bit that also doesn't give away a plot point. But yes, so that's just a page of it there. So I would just write little notes there, little chapter headings. So this is the book I'm writing at the moment. So the chapters would be just very, very briefly described there. And then I would go all the way through to the end, and I would kind of plan out who did it, so I would know who did it. But the last few books, the Postscript Murders and Stranger Diaries and Nighthawks, I actually haven't had a written plan. I've managed to keep it all basically in my head, and I've been a little looser with it. And it's funny, really, because I would say those are my 3 books with the most complex murder and complex plot, and the Postscript Murders has a very complex plot. But I was able to sort of keep it in my head and maybe be a bit more confident about changing it as I went along. And there's a wonderful quote, I think it's E.L. Doctorow, said that writing a book is like driving in the dark with your headlights on. You can't see much of the road, but you can make the whole journey that way. And I think I've just started to have the confidence of doing that. But I had a really interesting chat yesterday, another sort of Zoom interview with 2 other crime writers. And they had such interesting different processes. And one of them had 3 lists, and it was people, places, plot. And she would write everything in each of these 3 lists and then put them together. And the other one basically did a sort of spreadsheet, I guess, of where every character was every 10 minutes in her book.
Right. Yeah.
So that's quite impressive. I'm a little bit scared of spreadsheets now. Pauline, with her technical know-how, she'd do a spreadsheet, all right. But I'm a little scared of such things, so I tend to just scribble things out longhand or keep them in my head. But it's just so interesting to me how even amongst writers, we're all different, and some writers that you imagine are terribly meticulous are actually a little bit slapdash, and others that the best of the world seem maybe a bit slapdash have got loads of spreadsheets and plans. And so I don't really know how it works, and all I can say is for me it's been slightly different with each book, but I usually do have an idea of how it's going to end, though I have changed that.
So you don't know who did it in the beginning, it sounds like. Yeah.
That's so,
and it's astounding that you keep it in your head, because it's true. I mean, it's not a complicated plot, but how people know each other kind of by the last parts, it does get a little intricate. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So it is kind of astounding that you don't have a diagram of that. Kind of.
And it is, I think that the hardest thing with the Postscript Murders was, as you were saying, it's narrated by 4 different characters, and they each have a chapter.
Yes, that was yes, the way
from their point of view, and it's remembering who knows what and when. And my editor, I've had the same editor for all the books, a wonderful editor called Jane Wood. She says that when you're there, when you're nearly at the end of the book, the reader should then know who did it. So you should have given them enough clues, and you should have been fair enough to them so that maybe just before the last chapter they guess, because in that way then you'll all end the book happy. The reader will be happy that they've solved it, and they won't feel cheated, and the writer will feel they've done a good job. I don't know if that always works out, but I think it's quite a good quite a good thing to keep it into your head, you know, that there should be a point when the reader starts to say, oh yeah, right, I see. But then if you're very clever, you might then just turn that again so they don't know.
Yes, that's what was my experience. I mean, I kind of guessed, but then how everybody knew each other and the whole background, definitely not.
Oh, good.
But is that the first time that you've written from alternating points of view? So also I want to make sure that people know it's not, I forget which book does this, where it's the same event seen from different people's point of view. So you're reliving that same moment. It's each one of the characters kind of picks up, and there's a little bit of overlap, but then it goes on to what they did at the same time, but it's new.
Yes, it sort of moves forward. Yes, is it Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle that does the same event again and again? It's very clever, but no, I don't do that. As you said, the story continues. Yes, the first time I'd done this structure, the Ruth books are mainly Ruth's point of view, sometimes Nelson, the detective. So usually it's just one or two points of view. It's the first time I've done this where there's a chapter for each one, and it was quite challenging because obviously Harbinder is the only official detective, so she was the only one able to sort of do the going and interviewing suspects. The others had to do their own thing, but I had a bit of fun with the idea of sort of amateur detectives, because the golden age of crime writing, sort of between the wars, works a lot with the idea of the amateur detective. So I wanted them to use different methods, and they use plain guesswork half the time. And Benedict, the cafe owner, monk turned cafe owner, is always trying to turn them into anagrams and word clues and just be super clever in that literary way. And sometimes he's right and sometimes he isn't. So I had quite a lot of fun with that.
So yeah, so tell people just a little bit more, maybe, because I don't think I fully understand what the golden age of mysteries is.
Well, I mean, it's not always totally defined, but it's often used to mean that period basically between the First World War and the Second World War, and particularly kind of in the 20s and 30s. There was a real spate of crime writing. We think of Agatha Christie, but also Margaret Allingham, Naomi Marsh, Dorothy L. Sayers, who wrote stories often set in sort of country houses or in enclosed locations, featuring an amateur or unofficial detective. Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple, famously a spinster, because after the First World War there were a lot of unmarried women. Because a lot of the men had been killed in the First World War, and these women were sort of aunties and often a bit overlooked. And I think Miss Marple is Agatha Christie's response to that. She's an elderly woman who knows and sees everything. So, and also Lord Peter Wimsey is Dorothy L. Sayers detective, is an example of the sort of aristocratic detective. And there is a bit of a class thing there sometimes. I was reading about a real life murder that happened in 1860 in Britain called the Road Hill House case. It was a terrible murder of a young boy. And it was one of the first murders where they brought in a Scotland Yard detective called Mr. Witcher. And you might have read that brilliant book about it, Suspicions of Mr. Witcher. And so Mr. Witcher comes in and he's a working class detective. And he accuses one of the family. And people were horrified that he would have the nerve to do that. And without too many spoilers, I won't say who he accused, he was right. But there's a strange sort of class thing as well, particularly in Britain, where they think, well, the working class detective can't solve it. We'll have to bring in a lord who'll solve it secretly. So that's often thought of as the golden age of crime. It's these books, often with an unofficial detective, often sort of set in a country house, and with often with a very sort of tricksy and clever plot. So I love those books, really. I mean, some of them, when you read them today, are a little bit hard to read, but a lot of them have really, passed the test of time. And I really do think it's interesting, actually, that the two that are most successful here, particularly the two Agatha Christies, are Murder on the Orient Express and Then There Were None. And again, without spoilers, those are both books where justice is meted out justice is served, but not by the official, not through the official channels. And they do say that crime fiction really is very popular in times of unrest, in times of people are rather worried. And I have to say, this last year has seen a huge surge in people reading crime fiction. So it could be something about justice being served in these books.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, because I bet there is an art to the genre itself that I probably don't know about, but you're describing it. And it also sounds like the history of the genre. I mean, are you a student of the history of the genre in terms of reading? You know, I asked you about an author I discovered just through a company that does rare editions called Folio Books, but Josephine Tey. So are you a student of the genre?
Yeah, yes, I am. Though, you know, I would not call myself an expert, but I teach creative writing, and as part of that, we do teach the Golden Age. We do look at the genre, but also personally, I'm a fan of them. And Josephine Tey, who you showed there, I really like her books. There are a few that would strike us now as very kind of snobbish, I guess. But there are a few that absolutely stand the test of time. And the one we saw just then was called The Daughter of Time. And I don't know if anyone in the book club has read it, but it's about the murder of the princes in the Tower, supposedly by Richard III. So just before the Tudor age in the Wars of the Roses. And this book for me has always been a real inspiration, because it's a book about a murder that happened 500 years ago, where the detective is actually in bed through the whole thing because he's ill, he's in hospital. And yet it's absolutely mesmerizing. And it always makes me think, you know, if you can do that, if you can have a murder that happened 500 years ago, you can have a detective who never gets out of bed, and it's still thrilling, you know, that really is an absolute a standard to achieve. So I absolutely recommend Daughter of Time if anyone is, and it's made me very, very interested in King Richard III. And you might remember few years ago, his body was actually found in Leicester in England. That they did find his body. So fascinating. Another really good one is Miss Pym Disposes, which is about another of those overlooked elderly women who solves a crime at a rather strange school for teachers of physical education. So it's a strange old setup, actually, but yeah, physical training college, where actually Josephine Tey went. And I was just saying to Pauline when we were chatting before, I absolutely also really recommend an author called Nicola Upson. She's a modern day writer, but she writes about, in her books, Josephine Tey is the detective. Upson, U-P-S-O-N. And she's worth reading. She's a very good writer. She's an expert on Josephine Tey, and the books are really interesting. So yeah, I really do like this period of there you are, brilliant. Gosh, so you see how lovely they are. Really interesting. And there's one that I've just read that was set in that's at Christmas time, and it was just, you know, weirdly, that's right, the dead of winter. Weirdly, crime novels can be quite comforting reads at Christmas. Well, I certainly found this one was. So absolutely recommend her. And another author, Golden Age author that I like, who isn't so well known, is Nancy Spain. And she wrote a book called, well, she's written several books, but one of them is, there you are. These are some new editions, Virago. Oh, that's great. Death Goes on Skis. And there's another really good one called Cinderella Goes to the Morgue, which has got to be one of the best titles ever, really.
Yes, so, really.
If you're interested in Golden Age, you know, if you can find a Nancy Spain, it's really great to see they're bringing one out. So maybe they'll bring all of them out.
It doesn't. I don't see Cinderella here, so that.
No, I don't see Cinderella. And there's another one called Poison for Teacher. So yeah, well worth reading.
All right. So. All right. So let me get. So someone asked, why do you think murder mysteries and British murder mysteries in particular are incredibly popular, and why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I think British murder mysteries and certainly some American mysteries too, are very good at creating a sort of enclosed world. Sometimes they're called closed circle mysteries, where you have a world. Maybe it's a country house, maybe it's a school, where maybe it's a teacher training college, where it has its own rules and its own sort of language and its own traditions and things like that. And also the fact that the crime is usually solved. I think that's very important. Certainly in European crime fiction, as I was saying, my family are Italian, and Italian crime fiction, quite often it isn't solved at the end. Even in the Montalbano books, sometimes they're not solved, and that's such a strange thing for us. So I think in British and American tradition of mysteries, usually there's a solution, and usually there is some sort of justice. And I think people like that. I think people like the fact that there's an intricate crime, and then there's justice. There's the moment when Poirot says, let's come to the library, and that makes Belaine, goodness knows what accent I'm doing now. Obviously it's meant to be Belgian, but goodness, could be anything really. But he then explains the whole thing, and you can see that tradition still in crime fiction now. And where the detective, I try not to do this, I find it's quite annoying when the detective says, yes, I know who did it, but I won't tell you yet. You think, oh, tell us. But yes.
So Susan's saying, my book club read The Daughter of Time and loved it. Yeah, I think it was voted the best mystery of all time by mystery writers themselves. So I found that interesting because of the question I asked you before, which is, it seems like that authors are students of the genre, which gets back to the postscript murders, because Peggy certainly was a student of the genre, but it was like she was a scholar of the genre because she had such an encyclopedic knowledge, right, of all of the plots. And
yeah, I wanted the Golden Age to kind of come into it, and I did invent a Golden Age writer called Sheila Atkins. And I'm very pleased sometimes when I see most frequently asked questions about the book, is Sheila Atkins real? So I feel quite pleased about that. So I invented and also I love making up titles, and Sheila Atkins's books, which I made up, all have Shakespeare quotes as titles, and I love using Shakespeare quotes, and it's fair to say my publishers are not that keen on that. So my publisher said, I hope you've got all those out of your system now. Those lovely things like, oh, the Prince of Darkness is a gentleman, and The Sleeping and the Dead, all those great titles. So it was important to me to make Peggy interested in the genre, and also to sort of create a fictional Golden Age writer, so could sort of look at, and there's quite a lot in the book about crime fiction generally, about the different, because it's a really interesting genre, isn't it? Because it ranges from those kind of cozy mysteries, and I was looking up the other day, I don't know why I was looking up, that there's a whole subgenre of crime novels about solved by dogs.
No.
There are things called the Bite Club and stuff like that. It's very, very strange. But so it's so you have, on one level you have crime solved by dogs and cats, which is I promise you a subgenre. On the other hand, you have this sort of super violent gangland thrillers, and really, really sort of intense. Even people like Val McDermott, and who is incidentally has been a big influence on me, and a big. Really big supporter of mine, but her books are very, can be very violent on that end of it. And you have the police procedurals, people like Peter James, who are so, or Don Winslow with this high-level political stuff, and all of whom are brilliant. But there's just room for everyone, isn't there? Sort of room for everyone in between. Then you have the historical stuff. A big fan of C.J. Sansom, who writes crime novels set in Victorian times, and so I really love that about the genre. You have crime novels that have a lot of romance, some that have no romance. You can have things that are very violent, things that, obviously murder is violent, but with much less gratuitous violence. I would say mine definitely fall into that category. But it just fascinates me by how different they all can be. There's been almost another little surge in supernatural things like Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and Behind Her Eyes, and all those novels. So I just love how varied it is, really, as a genre.
Yeah. And so is Harbinder going to be a series now?
There'll be at least one more book with her in, yeah. So I feel that if you've read this one or you're reading it, you'll kind of know there's a few more things I think that I would like her to do and experience. So I think I will. I feel she's got a bit more in her, so I'll do at least one more novel about her. Yeah.
So what? But what if it's wildly successful and there's a movie based on it, and people just can't get enough?
Then I'll write loads more. Then I'll write loads more. And also, I've written, as I say, 13 Ruth novels. I'm writing the 14th, so I don't mind writing a long series. So absolutely, I'm not ruling that out.
So Joanne is asking, how old were you when you wrote your first story?
Well, published story is one thing, but actually, I wrote my first mystery novel when I was 11, and it was called The Hair of the Dog. And which must have been something my parents talked about. And it was based in a little village near me now, actually, called Rottingdean. And it was about a little village where nothing much happened. So a group of young people decide to stage a fake murder to bring the media to the village, but of course the fake murder turns into a real murder, and it wasn't published. But actually, I found, this isn't it, but I found recently. So you can see this is my school science book. It seemed to be cross sections of some sort of fruit, but then if you look further into it, there's a story. So I immediately gone into writing and it is a mystery story, this one called like Leaves on a Tree. It's not quite dark, actually. It's about a priest who gets killed. There was the first page of it. Next to some nice pictures of horses. I still like drawing horses. So that was the first thing that I wrote when I was 11. And then when I was at secondary school, I used to write little episodes of Starsky and Hutch. I don't know if there are any Starsky and Hutch fans out there, but I was a big Starsky and Hutch fan. And I used to write these little episodes, just in longhand. But when I went into school, you know, people would want to read them. People would, you know, be, oh, have you written anything new? Have you written a new episode? And I always remember I wrote an episode of Starsky and Hutch where Starsky dies. And that was quite a big thing for me because I really liked Starsky. He was my favourite. And I remember it going round in class, obviously when we were meant to be working, people would be reading this, and people started to cry.
Oh my God.
And I liked that. You know, I liked that I could do that I could make them cry. You know, so I think that was the first time, and I must have been about sort of 14 or 15 when I wrote those. First time I sort of thought, well, I think maybe I can do this, you know, maybe I can know how to make people laugh and make them cry and make them scared. So always really wanted to be a writer. I read English at university, then I went to work first in a library and then for a publishing company, worked for HarperCollins. But it wasn't until I was nearly 40 that I had my first novel accepted for publication, and by which time I had 2 children. I actually started the book that eventually was published. I started when I was on maternity leave, expecting my twins, who are now 23. So 24 years ago, I started my first book that actually was published. That wasn't published.
Incredible. Wow, what an inspiration. And so it sounds like it's one a year.
Well, since then it's been more than one a year. Yeah, for the last few years, I've written a couple a year. Yeah, and I also write a children's mystery series, which isn't published in the US, I'm afraid, called A Girl Called Justice. Have I got one of those? I don't know where they are. But yes, so that's kind of mystery for middle grade, you know, for 8-year-olds.
Fun. Who's the detective or main character?
She's called Justice. She's called Justice Jones, and fun enough, she's based on my mum, because remember I was saying about my granddad was an actor, and my mum was brought up by him, but single parent family, which was quite unusual then. And she travelled around the country with him, going from theatre to theatre. And then when she was about 10, he realised he had to send her to school. So she went to boarding school, which she really didn't like. And the matron at the boarding school, the first thing she said to my mum was, "You must never talk about your father." And that was because he was an actor, and that was considered lower class, really. So the protagonist of these books is called Justice, and she's based on my mum. And she's a girl who goes to school for the first time, aged 12, I think it is, and loves to solve mysteries. And luckily for her, there's a ready-made mystery at the school for her to solve in the first one.
I mean, what the murder you wrote, well, the mystery you wrote when you're 11 sounds quite intricate. And I would say mystery is not the first genre children think of, right? It's usually like a fairy tale or something like that. So what do you think made you choose that genre? Do you remember?
I've often thought about that because I think it is quite unusual to write, and it really is a very kind of traditional murder mystery with a sort of restricted number of cast, and it's set in a little village. And I think I must have been interested. I started reading Agatha Christie when I was quite young. I don't think I was reading her at 11 yet. I think actually it was probably Enid Blyton, you know, with the famous 5 and Secret 7. If you think about it, those are detective books. So I think I was quite influenced by those, really. And later on, obviously, I got very into reading Agatha Christie and similar things. So I think I was interested. I was in fact with my 2 best friends, we used to put on these murder mystery plays, and our poor families, because they were very easy to spot, because my friend Nancy was always the detective, Anita was always the victim, and I was always the murderer. So, you know, it wasn't a hard thing to solve. And poor old Anita getting killed off in the first act. She has complained about that since.
I mean, I can't believe how much we've gotten to in this hour. I mean, it's a revelation. So
it's whizzed past, hasn't it? The time, I don't know how that's happened.
But the amount of like grounded and fascinating things is really incredible. So what I'm going to do is, we have just a short period left. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to choose the winners of the 5 books while you're answering the question, so we don't waste time with that. And yeah, I think that's it. But Tessa is asking, do you bring any of your Italian heritage into your stories?
Oh, hi. Well, yes, in fact, one area we haven't gone to is actually, I was talking about my first published book. It was published under my real name, which is Domenica de Rosa, and which sounds completely made up, I know, but actually is my real name. So I published 4 books as Domenica de Rosa, all about Italy, families, relationships, that sort of thing. So when I got the idea to write about Ruth and write a murder mystery, because those 4 aren't murder mysteries, they're kind of women's fiction, it was my editor who said to me, "Oh, you need a crime name." And Elly Griffiths was actually my grandmother's name, and she was Ellen Griffiths. I wanted to be Ellen Griffiths. Somehow I became Elly, and I remember asking my publishers about it later, saying, how come I became Elly? And she said, I don't know. I just think it looked a bit tidier. And if you see in the British ones, Elly does fit quite nicely there. So maybe they just chose it because it fitted between the G and the F of Griffiths. So in the Ruth books, because I'd written 4 books about Italy, I said to myself, right, no more Italians, no more Catholics. But I broke that rule immediately because there were so many lapsed Catholics in my books. I'm very interested in religion and belief and things like that. And Ruth, book 10, she does go to Italy. So I finally caved in and sent her to Italy. The Dark Angel, that one's called.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to read off the winners just so we get to, because I try and keep it under an hour, because then we can archive it very easily on Instagram and Facebook. So if anybody asks you, if you want to tell people about this, just go to our Facebook page and they'll be able to watch this.
I will. Don't worry. I will be sharing it.
I'm telling all of the audience, but yes, you too. Well, and I'll tag you to make sure if you want to share it. So Doris Royals wins a copy of the book. Pamela Harlan, Kathy Romash, Jill Dean, and Joanne Kraft. So
well done, guys.
Yeah, and for all of you, for everybody else, I really recommend it. It's going to whiz by, and now we know about the entire series and the inspirations, and and some great old detective novels. So thank you so much, Elly. So I'll circle back with you about this out of print Golden Age mystery, because I think that'd be super interesting.
Yeah.
For those of you, I'm just going to say this quickly. you know MJ Rose, who's the author of, we interviewed her for it, right? And she is the co-founder of an organization for thriller writers called ITW, International Thriller Writers. And she co-founded it with, oh my gosh, I'm going to blank on his name. But at any rate, they have a festival and it's a really wonderful, like, supportive organization. Lee Childs. Sorry, Lee Childs.
Oh, yeah.
So at any rate, so, and Elly has just joined them, so it's very interesting. Okay, oh, good. Yes, email me your mailing addresses, paulinabookmovement.com. Elly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to Gus. Is it Gus?
Yeah, Gus is here. There he is. He's been very good. Yeah, Gus.
He has been very good.
Yeah, but he was making a bit of a noise because there were some seagulls in the garden, but he's got them under control, so it's all okay. Thank you so much, Pauline. Thank you for a brilliant session and lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Wonderful to see you. Thank you, everybody. All right, we'll see you next week, hopefully. Bye, Elly. Thanks.